Oh, gentleman from 19.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to make sure everyone had a chance to get everything they needed to off their chest. I know, Mr. Speaker, that technically
When we debate, we're not just getting things off our chest. He's attributing motives to.
Please continue, gentleman from 19.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the good gentleman from 34 is correct. Technically, we are debating House Bill 387. Technically, we are debating whether to appropriate some money to our four-year institutions. Technically, we are debating whether we should further cut, or to use the terms of a microeconomist, make a downward adjustment to the budget, a divestment in our own public institutions. That's what we're debating. What I feel, however, that we're really debating is the question of how scared should we be of social justice and critical race theory. Now, as a black man and someone who is deeply familiar with these concepts and ideas at both a practical level and an academic level, I have been saddened by this conversation. I think it has been disappointing, and I think it's been problematic. Now, those words I just used might seem a little bit bombastic, and I'm not prone to bombast, so let me explain myself. I am a proud Boise State graduate. I'm just going to lay my bias out there for everyone to hear. I went there on the GI Bill. That place provided opportunities I had never seen before in my life. It changed my life. And then, I was the chief academic, excuse me, Mr. Speaker. And then, I was the chief academic officer for the State Board of Education. So I have tremendous bias towards all of our public post-secondary institutions who do tremendous work, not just teaching kids, who, by the way, are adults. I'm talking about the research that they do for the Cattlemen and the Wheat Commission, the interns that they spill out year after year for all the small businesses in Idaho. I'm talking about the total economic and social impact on our state. And while they are not perfect institutions, I think we can all agree on that. I think we can all agree we are not a perfect institution. They do absolutely essential work. And I fear, based on my interpretation of the months-long discussion, the thousands of emails, the millions of social media posts, that our appreciation for our public post-secondary institutions is dangerously low. Now, before talking about the claims that I've heard over the last few months as to why we should further divest from our public institutions, I would like to define, rather than describe, social justice and critical race theory. Social justice, friends, is merely the social equivalent of legal justice. That's it. And legal justice is the pursuit of fairness in the eyes of the law. So social justice is just the pursuit of fairness in the eyes of society. It's a process. It's one I believe in, and I pray that everybody here believes in it too. The good news is I don't think our conflict is about social justice. I think our conflict is about how we pursue fairness in the eyes of society. That's where ideas like critical race theory come in. So what is it? As I used to tell my undergraduate students, there are 4 things you need to know about critical race theory. Number 1, it is a theory for which there is no universally accepted idea or definition, even by its proponents. It's not a thing, it's not an object, it's an idea. Number 2, it tries to explain our social situation and to explain the present through a more inclusive and representative version of the past. If you can break it down to a single thing, number 3, this is it. Critical race theory and critical race theorists do believe this single thing, that America's social institutions, our legislatures, our courts, our schools, you name it, they do have, to varying extents, they are embedded to varying extents with some bias towards people of color. I don't think that's controversial. When you look at outcomes, virtually every law and policy that we maintain has a disparate and adverse impact on people of color. Housing, health, education, wealth, income. People of color always come out on the losing end. Always. And I don't think it's unfair to acknowledge it. And perhaps most importantly, number 4, critical race theory does not hold that systemic racism in the United States is irredeemable. It is not. It is fixable. In fact, most critical race theorists argue the opposite, that we can fix it. Critical race theory was born in the legal profession by lawyers who knew that in order for America to achieve its dreams and its ideals, that we had to make improvements to the lawmaking process. It does not judge all of us and subject us to predetermined outcomes. It just acknowledges some realities that are hard for lots of people to acknowledge. Now, there is no doubt that talking about critical race theory can be difficult and uncomfortable for a lot of people, especially people who don't want to or don't have to think about these things. But to argue that it is divisive and shouldn't be taught to adults on our post-secondary campuses seems a little ill-informed and impulsive. And any decision that we make based on critical race theory should be based on the theories themselves, not someone's interpretation of those theories, especially when the people who are interpreting that theory don't like that theory. I like pizza. I don't ask my neighbor who hates pizza what they think of the new pizza shop in town. And if I do, I don't rely solely on their perspective. Now, I've heard repeatedly claimed that critical race theory is divisive. It divides us. But that claim is historically ignorant, and it presupposes unification. It assumes that we are all sitting around the campfire, holding hands, black and white, tall, short, rural, urban, rich, poor, you name it, singing Kumbaya. And critical race theory jumped out of the woods, said, break it up, break it up. No more good times. It's not the way it is. The truth is that our federal government, our state governments, our local governments, countless private enterprises have spent hundreds of years dividing us, telling us whose property and who's not, where I can live, where I can't, where we can eat, whether I can vote, what my mortgage interest rate is. So I can't settle for vagaries anymore, Mr. Speaker. If I am to believe that social justice and critical race theory is dividing us, here is what I need to hear. I need to hear actual stories about how it is causing interpersonal harm between you and others. How is it dividing you from your friends? How is it dividing you from your family? How is it preventing you from developing relationships with strangers? Causing fights on the internet.
Mr. Speaker, I object.
State your objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Talking about how critical race theory in your families, in your homes, this is not relevant to the bill at hand. We're talking about funding the colleges and how we're going to fund the colleges
Your point
and
is
if we're
well
going
taken.
to fund the college.
The gentleman was going to work his way back to the budget bill before us.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So let me just summarize that. Social justice is just the pursuit of fairness in the eyes of society, and critical race theory is just an acknowledgement that our social institutions have some bias in them. And if we care, if we are willing to talk to one another and hear, not just listen, but hear, we can fix it. So, against that backdrop, Mr. Speaker, I now feel prepared to address what I think have been the two overarching claims as to why we should divest in our public institutions further than we already have. The first claim is that indoctrination is afoot. Our students are being forced to accept sets of beliefs uncritically. That is what indoctrination is. We've been told that faculty are teaching students to hate America, that faculty are promoting racist ideas, that they are retraining students' minds. We've been fed countless anecdotes about students being bullied or belittled for their beliefs, but drastic cuts to higher education cannot be based in anecdote alone. It cannot be. We need a more reliable way to determine whether indoctrination is occurring. Fortunately for us, attempted indoctrination is a violation of multiple existing policies. The State Board of Education is pretty clear on this. Faculty may not force students to make personal or political decisions. They may not. And all of the institutions know that that is their North Star. So let's pick our favorite punching bag, Boise State University. What do they say about this? Well, if you look...
Well, I'm going to rule it was the opponents of the bill that are saying we should vote this down because of these things that are taught. Now, the gentleman stays generally in between the white lines here, but
Mr. Speaker, it wasn't about things that were taught. It was about advocacy and promotion. The law says nothing about things that are taught, and no debate was made that way.
all right. Okay, the House will be at ease. Take 5. The House will be in order. Prior to going at ease, the House was in the 7th order of business. After our suspension, and we were debating House Bill number 387. The Speaker will remind the body that you will speak when you're recognized by the chair. So if you have an objection, you say, Mr. Speaker, I have an objection. I say, for example, good gentleman from District 34, state your objection. And then we would proceed, but we would not do what we did before we went at ease. All right? Everybody got that? Well, with that, we'll proceed. We interrupted the gentleman from 19 who was debating House Bill 387. Gentleman from 19, you have the floor to continue your debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I apologize to the good members for slowing the process down when I meant to speed it up. So I'm going to spare you, and I'm going to skip over everything I want to say, everything I feel like I've earned the right to say, and I'm going to get right to the point. 2 things. We need to do 2 things. The first thing we need to do is we need to do our constitutionally mandated job, and we need to vote yes on this budget. And to be crystal clear, voting yes on this budget does not mean you endorse critical race theory. Voting yes on this budget does not mean you hate Idaho values. What it means is that you believe in due diligence. What it means is that you have a basic respect for the value that our higher ed institutions provide to this state. The second thing we need to do is we need to lower the temperature on this debate. We need to lower the temperature for the sake of our children, who need to know that the adults in the room and their supposed leaders have the ability to constructively navigate difficult, complex, and controversial public policy problems. We need to lower the temperature on this debate for the sake of our business community, because this debate is having an adverse impact on their ability to spin up new businesses, to recruit and retain talent, to grow, to operate. And we need to lower the temperature on this debate for the sake of our public post-secondary institutions. They are doing their absolute best with almost no help from us. And we are asking them to do more every day while giving them less. So if you take nothing else from what I've just said, please know that we are hurting our students, and when we hurt our students, we hurt ourselves. I'm asking, please do what duty and responsibility requires and give this your green light. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.